सीएनबीसी आवाज और सीएनबीसी बाजार के दर्शकों का स्वागत है। कल वित्त मंत्री ने अपना नया बजट पेश किया और अब हम बात कर रहे हैं पूर्व वित्त मंत्री और कांग्रेस के वरिष्ठ नेता पी चिदम्बरम साहब से। बजट के बारे में कॉन्टेक्स्ट ये था कि सब लोग जब बजट की बात करते हैं तो वो रेफर करते हैं 91 के रिफॉर्मिस्ट बजट को और 96 के चिदम्बरम साहब के ड्रीम बजट का जिक्र करते हैं। उससे अगर कंपेयर किया जाए तो ये बजट चिदम्बरम साहब को कैसा लगा ये जानने की कोशिश करते हैं। सर, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर स्पेयरिंग टाइम फॉर अस। The first question would be, how do you rate this budget, given we have been comparing this budget with, we were expecting this budget to be better than 91 budget or 96 budget?
They had an opportunity. I think they blew the opportunity. They had 282 members on their side in the Lok Sabha, but I'm afraid they just got into a lot of patchwork jobs to get the budget out. The net result is the budget has failed the test of fiscal consolidation. The budget has failed the test of equity. Large sections of the people have been ignored and cruel cuts have been made in key spending areas. And finally, the budget has failed the test of tackling rising inequality. In fact, it has given so much to the already rich and so cruelly neglected the already poor that I'm afraid this budget will go down as one which accentuates inequality.
Looking at the tight fiscal situation, and the unrealistically high expectations that we had, don't you agree that we should actually concede that it is a good budget, if not great budget?
Well, good and bad are relative terms. To the extent that he says he will introduce GST, it is good. To the extent that he says he will implement our idea of merging FMC and SEBI, it is good. To the extent they say that they will make more cash transfers through DBT, it is good. These are ideas which owe their origins to a previous government, and if they are in government today and they are implementing these ideas, I will welcome that. I will certainly call it good. But ultimately, the test is some core principles. And as I said, the core principles are fiscal consolidation, equity, and tackling rising inequality. Unless these core principles are satisfied, I'm afraid, how can I say the budget is overall good?
ओके सर, जो हमारे बॉम्बे वाले एक्सपर्ट लोग हैं वो कहते हैं कि ये फैट कैट कॉर्पोरेट का बजट नहीं है, बल्कि जो बहुत ही फिकल माइंडेड और बहुत ही हार्श वोटर है उसका बजट है. द इंटायर बजट इज बेसिकली अ politically oriented budget rather than growth oriented budget.
Well, whether growth will happen or not, we'll have to wait and see. The economy was on the mend in 2013-14. The CSOs put out that in 2013-14, economic growth recovered to 6.9%. And in 2014-15, it will be 7.4%, a natural rise. So perhaps growth will happen. But the point is, why did the finance minister decide to give away 20,000 crore in corporate tax in the first year, 40,000 crore in the second year, 60,000 crore in the third year, and 80,000 crore in the fourth year to the corporate sector? Taken together, in 4 years, he would have given away 2 lakh crore to the corporate sector. Nobody has been able to explain to me why this was necessary. This is clearly repaying the corporate sector, which apparently is extremely friendly to the BJP.
Sir, don't you think that he's giving you a predictable regime for taxation in line with ASEAN tax rates? And corporates should actually, they are actually complaining this year the tax burden will go up to 34.6%, and instead of wealth tax they will be charged surcharge of 2%, so they have got burdened with it.
No, I mean, I don't understand what is this year. We are talking about the financial year 2014-15. The tax rate was what was announced in the last budget. If we are talking about the financial year 2015-16, since he has promised that in the financial year 2016-17 the rate will be cut, many corporates will simply defer calculating or taking in their profits. Income deferral is a very well-known device. They will simply defer the profits and they will take it in the year after. This is an unusual gift to the corporates.
And you don't take the assurance on exemption front that all exemptions will be withdrawn. You are not taking that assurance seriously?
No, I take everything that the finance minister takes seriously. One should take the finance minister seriously. But which exemption? I don't know. Is he going to cut back on depreciation? Is he going to cut back on the investment allowance? Is he going to cut back on the tax holidays given to the gas and oil sector? Unless he spells out which exemption he's taking away. Or is he going to take away the excise concessions for new factories located in, say, Uttarakhand and Himachal? Which is the one that he's taking away? I mean, I don't know. Unless we know which exemption he's taking away,
right,
it'll be difficult to take them into calculation.
Okay. Sir, let's come back to the critical test, fiscal deficit number. He has kind of said that
yes,
it will be 3.9%. What do you think is the quality of this fiscal deficit, especially in the context of a revenue deficit number which is 2.8% of GDP? Do you think it is a healthy fiscal deficit to have?
See, he slipped on fiscal consolidation. Even 2 weeks ago, the finance minister made the promise that he will stick to the fiscal consolidation path. If you read the economic survey, in more than one place it says we must stick to the path that has been announced. According to that path, he should have set a target of 3.6% for next year and 3% for the year after. Instead of 3.6%, he says 3.9%. The difference is 0.3%. That amounts to 37,500 crore rupees. So I looked into the numbers to see where is this 37,500 crore rupee going. It's going entirely, I repeat, it's going entirely into non-plan expenditure. Total expenditure has actually gone up. Total expenditure goes up from 16,81,000 crore to 17,77,000 crore. But plan expenditure is going down from 4,67,000 crore to 4,65,000 crore. Therefore, the additional amount that he's borrowing and the additional spending that he is doing is going into non-plan expenditure. How can I accept this as a good qualitative expenditure?
Do you think he is trying to be vague here, because he tried to convey an impression that all the fiscal deficit side, whatever liberty he is taking, he is putting that money back on capital expenditure, on infrastructure development, not on unproductive administrative expenditure?
I mean, I can see where that is coming from. What he is doing is he is counting non-plan capital account and plan capital account. Counting that, he says, my capital expenditure is increased. That's one way of looking at it. But the traditional way of looking at it is to see plan versus non-plan. Plan expenditure is going down. Non-plan expenditure is going up. That qualitatively is bad. So I think it's a way of looking at it. One always gives greater weightage to plan expenditure. But if you play the numbers around, you can always arrive at a conclusion that is favorable to you.
फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर ये कहते रहे कि पब्लिक इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाना बहुत जरूरी है, और हम लोग भी ये बात बहुत कह रहे थे कि फिस्कल डेफिसिट के बारे में डोंट ट्राई टू बी अ फंडामेंटलिस्ट, यू कैन लिव विथ सम ग्रेटर नंबर ऑफ फिस्कल डेफिसिट if you are spending public money on infrastructure or growth. Don't you think that this is what Jaitley ji has tried to do, that he is spending more on real critical big projects of infrastructure sector?
See, I entirely support spending money on infrastructure. In fact, I have argued that government must spend more on investment. Government must encourage investment expenditure rather than consumption expenditure. There are no two views about that. The point is, you have to live within your means. We made the mistake in the past years by borrowing and spending. We corrected it. By 2007-8, I had been able to bring down the fiscal deficit to 2.5%, well below the 3% norm. Subsequently, thanks to the international financial crisis, we had to borrow more. Fiscal deficit went up to 6.7%. And that's when our problems multiplied. Therefore, we have to borrow only within limits. And the limit has been set as 3% in 2016-17. Unfortunately, the finance minister has pushed that date back by 1 year, and that's not a good thing. He can borrow up to 3%. This year he could have borrowed up to 3.6 and spent the whole of it in capital investment. Who's going to complain? In fact, I'll be the first to applaud him. But when he borrows beyond the limit set, when he borrows an additional 37,500 crore beyond the limit, and then spends all of it in non-planned expenditure, I'm afraid I would have to question the wisdom of that decision.
Okay. Sir, let's talk about excise rate hike in certain items and the hike in service tax. There was a belief that it should now converge in one single rate in wake of preparations for GST. Now this divergence, how do you see that?
Well, unless he tells us what agreement has been reached between the central government and the state governments on the GST rate. See, service tax, excise duty and the VAT must converge into a GST rate or rates. There's some talk about a single rate, there's talk about dual rates. Unless the finance minister shares with us what agreement has been reached with the states about the ultimate GST rate, it will be very difficult to say whether there is convergence or divergence. The service tax has been hiked to 14%. Excise duty has been hiked to a little over 12%. Where is it converging? Is it converging at 12 or is it converging at 14? So unless I know the end result, it will be difficult to say whether this is a good or bad move.
Right. Let's talk about black money, sir. They are coming with a new law on Benami transaction, and they are also considering one opportunity to come clean. Otherwise, there will be a very, very new harsh law to attack black money issue. How do you rate his observations on black money issue?
The entire speech on the black money and the new law appears to be focused on assets abroad. That is how I read the speech. It's focused on assets abroad. I don't think all that deals with the black money or the unaccounted money that is generated within the country. And as far as money abroad is concerned, if an Indian citizen, Indian taxpayer has an asset abroad or has money stashed in a bank abroad without disclosing it to the Reserve Bank of India or the government, that is certainly punishable. And it should be punished. And I would welcome any law that punishes such secret account holders. But we'll have to see the law and we'll have to see the objective of the law.
Right. they have been defending their actions by saying that there is some actual change in political narrative. There is a fundamental shift the way politics and political economy should be conducted in this country. And focus on federalism is one big slogan they are kind of talking about, that we are giving more power to states. And if you read that with direct benefit transfer or the setting up of Mudra Bank, or their effort to give more money to very small little micro entrepreneurs, business loan to SC, ST, OBCs. So don't you think these are the fundamental changes which were a bit unaddressed so far?
No, I think you are taking whatever they say at face value. See, the total transfers from the central government to the states remains exactly the same. Please read the Finance Commission report. Please read especially the piece written by one of the members of the Finance Commission, Professor Govind Rao. And the Finance Minister himself admits in his speech that the total transfer will be 62% of all receipts of the central government. Within that, 42% is accounted for by a share of the taxes collected by the central government. So while untied funds has increased, the other funds have come down. The total that is being transferred from the center to the states remains exactly the same at about 62%. In the past, average was about 63 or 64%. So I don't think more money as a percentage of central government revenues is being shared with the state government. Now, what the Finance Commission did was, it only addressed the share of taxes that should go to the states. It addressed the revenue deficit. It addressed grant for disaster management. And it addressed grant for local bodies. It left out all the social sectors: health, education, environment and forest. All that was left out. And the Finance Commission said it is for the central government and the state government to work out a mechanism by which funds will be provided to these sectors. That mechanism has not been worked out yet, which is why the present budget makes cruel cuts in health, in education, in other social sector programs. Yesterday I gave a list of cuts they have made. They have made cuts in Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. They made cuts in the Prime Minister's Employment Guarantee Program, in the Integrated Child Development Services, in Project Tiger, in the allocation for the Ministry of Culture, in the allocation for scheduled castes under the scheduled caste sub-plan, allocation for scheduled tribes under the tribal sub-plan. All of this has been cut. Now, if the money for these programs have been cut, how will the central government ministries run their schemes which are being run today? Are these schemes going to be trimmed? Are these schemes going to be wound up? I don't know.
Sir, I think their argument...
Without addressing the problem...
Yeah, so their argument would be that now these schemes will be designed and run by the state governments, number one. Number two, that we will make the schemes more efficient. We will stop the leakage, and that's why still the good amount of money will still flow into the right beneficiaries.
How do you say that the state government will fund these schemes? Have you entered into an agreement with them? Have you entered into a pact with them? Who will monitor it? You give them untied funds. I have no problem with that. I support untied funds to the state government. But that is why the Finance Commission said you must have an alternative institutional arrangement to address the requirements of these key sectors. You read the dissent report by Professor Abhijit Sen, who is a member of the Finance Commission. He points out in the first year, these abrupt shifts will cause grave problems. I don't think anybody has read that dissent report. Specifically, he points out very key schemes: Backward Regions Grant Fund, Normal Central Assistance to the Plan, Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. All of them are going to be sufferers this year. Now, who is going to address that issue? When are they going to address those issues? If all these programs are starved of funds this year, then there will be a serious disruption in the implementation of these programs.
Right. Sir, my last question would be about private investments. Yes. Don't you think that pre-budget discussion was focused only on one point, that government must give right signals where domestic investors or foreign investors should really feel confident and start investing? So in terms of ease of doing business, plug and play mode, that you take the clearances with linkages in one go, no delays anymore. Don't you think that they have really tried to give a confidence signal, a signal of confidence to investors, and that's what this budget tries to do?
Plug and play was the UPA's invention. Please remember, the first 4 UMPPs, ultra mega power projects, was plug and play. We started plug and play with the first 4 UMPPs. We started plug and play with the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor projects. Therefore, plug and play is not a new idea of this government. They have now announced 5 more UMPPs under the plug and play. They are following our policy, and I welcome that. That is a good policy. I also agree, and I've written about it, that public investment must lead the way because private investment is sluggish. And public investment has a drag effect. Once you see the public sector investing, ONGC, Coal India, Steel Authority of India, GAIL, Gas Authority of India, when you see them investing, private investment will follow. So that again is nothing new. In fact, remember in 2012-13, I called the PSEs and said, you are making so much profit, either you use your money or lose your money. That worked. That year, capital investment by PSEs went up several fold. Again in 2013-14, the PSEs invested a huge amount of capital out of their profits. Now, if Mr. Jaitley wants to follow that policy, I welcome it. In fact, I would urge him to follow that policy. Right. But private investment has to be motivated, has to be encouraged, because the public sector simply does not have the resources to meet all the investment requirements. Now there, the PPP model is a struggling model that has to be fixed. Last year, Mr. Jaitley announced he's going to set up a 3P institution to fix the model. Nothing came out of it in the last 9 months. There's been no progress at all. This year he's announced in the budget that the risks will be rebalanced and government will take more of the risk. Now that's a big question mark. Now, what is the risk sharing?
Yeah.
What is the risk rebalancing? What greater risks will government assume in the PPP model? All that is not very clear. Unless we spell out all that, it will be difficult to comment whether they're going to achieve success.
Yes,
but I
sir.
wish them well.
Yeah, we shall wait for, he has to spell those things out. Sir, on a lighter vein, my last question, didn't you, both of you, met over a cup of tea before the budget?
No. I did not get any invitation to meet him over a cup of tea.
That would have helped us.
Right,
sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks.